For such a cherished human right, there sure are a lot of us who don't understand it. So here are 5 misunderstood things about free speech.
Steve, are you still trying to do that whole self-censoring thing and not trying to say 5 stupid things about it? Really, at least in this case, it actually does make sense. 5 misunderstood things. But are they really misunderstood, or are you just trying to say that we misunderstand them?
Number 1, free speech is more than the First Amendment. We Americans tend to treat the concept of free speech as synonymous with the First Amendment to our Constitution.
That's because it is, Steve. It's the First Amendment that grants you your right to free speech. That's why it's synonymous with it, because that's the law that gives you free speech to do what you can do on YouTube. It allows me also, a foreigner, to do what I can do on YouTube. It also happens to also abide by my own laws, but ultimately it's YouTube's laws that allow me to do this. Steve, it is literally synonymous. It is not actually not synonymous, which is what you're trying to say. It literally is.
Which states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. I myself, when discussing this issue, have often pointed out that the First Amendment defines the relationship between citizens and their government, not citizens and each other.
Well, actually, yes, it does. It's a law. And it's not just something that stops the government, it stops other people from doing that. On private property, you might actually have something going on there where someone can say, well, I don't want you to say that, please don't say that. But in terms of the public sphere, anything goes as long as it abides by the law. It's not just the government and us, it is between citizens and citizens, I'll have you know. But that's probably have to be reserved for a later date, won't it, Steve?
But the concept of free speech is much broader than the First Amendment to the Constitution of my country.
Go on, Steve.
And, just as importantly, it's much more complex than the I should get to say whatever I want principle that is promoted by certain people on the internet.
Straw man, we don't say we can say whatever we can, whenever we can, like you say. No. The difference is, we say we can espouse our opinions whenever we like, whenever we can, because it's just an opinion. The difference is, we don't want to incite people to do things based on those opinions. For example, I would never say, go out and kill an SJW to my audience. I would never do that, because that's inciting hatred, that is inciting violence, that is against the First Amendment as well, because the First Amendment, as well as other free speech laws, clearly state that you cannot incite violence upon others, or incite hatred upon others, or do anything like that. So, really, you're just strawmanning us, and that's not what we say. We want to espouse our opinions, not incite things. Unlike certain people, but never mind.
Number 2, it's not speech without consequence.
No shit, Steve. Natural law indicates that there will be a consequence for a certain action. Right? Every action, there will be a consequence. We're not stupid.
Respecting free speech doesn't mean that there can't be negative consequences for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Yes, Steve, and there can also be positive consequences for saying the very same things. You do realise that, right?
If I'm making racist or misogynistic comments online and my boss finds out about it and fires my ass, that doesn't mean that my boss doesn't respect free speech. If someone else sees me making bigoted comments and calls me out on it, that doesn't mean that they don't respect free speech.
In terms of the jobs, doesn't that depend on the job itself? If you're a racist and you're in a job that requires you not to be racist, say for example, I don't know, the police, I know some people will be wondering like, but the police are racist. Yeah, but they're not supposed to be, okay? In this country, if you're part of any racist organisation, you can't be in a position like that. If you're in a position where that could compromise things, maybe you do deserve to be fired. But if it's in a job where that doesn't even apply, say if you're just in a factory and you make cardboard or something, I don't think you would be fired for that, would you? Because that doesn't impact on anything. How does it impact on making cardboard? It might impact on the workers that you work with, but maybe they will just ignore you. You don't know. And as for the people, yeah, People will call you out on it. Just like they will also equally praise you. Even if they might be a minority, they will praise you and will defend you for saying these things. In fact, there will be some people who don't even agree with you but will defend your right to say these things or not get fired.
Respecting disagreement is a crucial part of the concept of free speech, but respecting disagreement doesn't mean respecting every disagreeing opinion, no matter how ignorant or toxic that opinion.
We're not asking you to respect the opinion. Obviously, I don't necessarily respect the opinion of a Nazi or even an extremist, social justice communist such as yourself. But I would still respect the disagreement. You don't. That's the thing. You're saying that it's crucial, but you don't believe that. That's why you block us. That's why you don't talk to us. This is why you do these things, Steve. Don't go around telling me this when you can't actually do it yourself.
Bigots with poor judgment are not a protected class, and there is no moral or legal principle requiring anyone else to put up with it.
But there are moral and legal implications that allow them to say what they have to say, and you know what? We can just ignore it. We don't have to do anything about it. We can just ignore them. We don't have to make a negative consequence. We don't have to make a positive consequence in terms of what they say. We can just ignore them. So what? You might be sort of right, but who cares? These people are always going to exist, and the law does protect them whether you like it or not.
Number 3, it doesn't guarantee you a platform.
In a public space, it certainly allows me to say whatever I want to say within reason and within the law, but if I was to do it in your house, obviously I don't have a platform there. But hey, whatever, what are you going to do?
Respecting free speech also means respecting the rights of others to moderate their own spaces.
What, are you talking about private property? Are you talking about places like literal spaces, like a society or something where they only want to hear a certain thing and not another? I'm just wondering. Are you trying to equate that with the public sphere? Just out of interest? This is what a lot of you tend to do.
I'm free to say whatever I want, but someone else is also free to decide that they don't want me to say it in a venue they control.
Yes, on their own private property, they can say what they want. Yes, Steve, on private property, they can tell you what you can and cannot say. But, again, this is not the same as the public sphere. What if that venue is actually a public place where anything goes? He then cannot do that, can he? It's like a pub, for example, or a concert place. They can't actually tell you what you can and cannot say there, even though it's a venue owned by potentially private people. So, what are you going to do, Steve, then?
This can be especially true if what I have to say is not particularly original, informed, or relevant to the purpose the moderator means to serve with that platform.
Are you talking about people saying things that are off topic? Well then, yeah, that's okay. You can moderate someone to say, can you please stay to the topic on hand? It's like in an interview where they try and change the topic, but the interviewer wants to keep them in that line. That's okay. I don't know what you're trying to say here, Steve.
Free speech doesn't magically impart value to anything I might say. The value of what I have to say, beyond my own opinion of it, is determined by those who hear it.
Yes and no. The Constitution, the First Amendment, gives everyone an equal footing and all of them deserve an equal chance to be heard. Obviously, all these opinions all have an equal opportunity to be espoused, and there's no real discrimination against them unless, of course, they're beginning to incite violence and hatred. But even then, in America, that's very small. Fighting words, for example. Now, yeah, we do assign value to certain opinions individually, not collectively. So, yeah, you're right there. But that still doesn't necessarily mean that the person has the right to stop that opinion being espoused, even if they don't like it.
And on that subject, number 4, it doesn't entitle you to be a bully.
I've already been through this, Steve, but you know what? You were going to take your time anyway, weren't you? Yes, it does not entitle you to be a bully. That's strictly against the First Amendment, isn't it, Steve?
Sometimes the noble concept of free speech is invoked for the most petty reasons imaginable. I've seen people assert their freedom of speech after offending someone with an insult. I've seen people assert their freedom of speech after it became clear that what they were saying was obviously hurtful to the person they were saying it to.
But that's assigning the value that you talked about earlier, and it's also subjective. It might be an insult, but that doesn't mean it's bullying, and that person might find it hurtful, but what if it wasn't actually an insult? What if it was criticism and they took it as an insult? Some people are like that, Steve. Like you. You are like that. You take criticism as insults and bullying, and you block people. You are like that. You're projecting here, really. You're talking about yourself. That doesn't count as bullying. That's still under the terms of free speech. That is still allowed. An insult is actually allowed. But it's all up to the person receiving it. They might choose to ignore it or not. But at the end of the day, that person can still say that. They're still protected to say that. It's the consequences afterwards in which they're not protected by.
I've seen people assert their freedom of speech to justify continuing to aggressively pursue a conversation with someone who clearly did not want to talk to them.
Really, Steve? Really? At that point, you either tell that other person who is aggressively seeking conversation, which, by the way, is that us trying to talk to you? By the way, is that what you're trying to say? In which case, you can just block the person or tell them to fuck off if it's in person. I don't understand what's the big deal. You do it anyway. This is just a non-argument here. This is nothing to be worked up about. This doesn't even make your point any less valid or any more valid. It's just something that happens everywhere. Some people don't like being talked to about other people. Sometimes you just can't help it.
Just as others can impose consequences for speech they find unacceptable or exercise discernment over who is allowed to speak on platforms they control, I can refrain from speaking out of respect for the circumstances or the sensitivities or concerns of others, even if I really want to say something.
Well, do it then. We can still break that rule anyway and say things they don't want us to say regardless. What are you going to do about it? I don't think anybody here is trying to force you to do any particular things. Anything, we asked you, begged you even. We even offered to give you money to donate to a charity, a feminist charity of your choice, if you just talk with us. But hey, it's your choice. You don't want to talk. That's absolutely fine. And even if you did want to talk, if you really want to but you don't want to, that's fine. I don't even get the argument here.
Free speech and self-control are not mutually exclusive.
What's your point, Steve? What's the point? Free speech and self-control. If they're not mutually exclusive, why are you talking about how you can do all this shit? It's not making any sense, Steve. Your arguments have been really poor. I mean, they're usually very poor, but this is particularly poor.
Number 5, it doesn't obligate others to listen to you.
Nobody denies that. They can just turn off the bloody video if they don't like what I'm saying. However, if I'm in a debate with somebody, say on national TV, for example, like Daily Politics, if they start just completely interrupting what I'm saying, even though I should be allowed to say what I have to say, and then they can have their turn, that is not allowed. They have to listen there, and they then have to respond. It's only then when maybe the moderator gives us a bit of a free rein, we can do this sort of thing. But that's all down to etiquette as well, really, isn't it? But yeah, you don't have to listen. Nobody's saying that you have to listen. I've said that before. I don't have to listen to you, but I do.
There are those who believe that respecting free speech means being willing to grant a hearing to anyone and everyone who has something to say about anything.
No, Steve, I think you'll find that those people say they have the right to do that. It's not that you have to do that, it's more that they have the right to that. But whatever, Steve, go and strawman us and twist our arguments if you want to.
But if that's how free speech actually worked, it would be socially acceptable for anyone to interrupt anyone else and begin an interaction without the other person's consent that they would then be obliged to continue until the person who started it was satisfied.
That happens anyway, and sometimes it is socially acceptable. It depends on the context, Steve. That happens in everyday conversation. We're not just robotic automatons that talk in a particular way. The only way that might be rude is in a debate or in an argument, or if you've just come out of nowhere. But even then, if you just come out of nowhere and you happen to interject something that makes sense or something that says something interesting, or if you've just met a person, like you walk up to them in public and go hi, that is okay within reason. It depends, again, how the people take it. That's not an argument, and that doesn't mean that we're wrong.
And if you're watching this video as someone who thinks that that's how free speech ought to work, that the people you want to talk to should be morally compelled to listen to you, might I suggest that you're not really concerned with people respecting free speech, but rather with people indulging your speech.
That perfectly describes every single social justice warrior on the face of the planet, Steve. That is exactly how you lot operate. That's not how we operate. We don't go around saying, oh, you have to listen to us, blah, 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 blah. No. We don't mind if you block us. We would prefer if you did not. But that is your choice at the end of the day. No, it's people like Black Lives Matter who stop pride parades in order to speak, who take off Bernie Sanders' right to speak in his bloody speech in order for them to spread their bullshit. That is what you lot do. You lot are the ones who are entitled enough to believe that. We don't. I've not seen a single anti-SJW do what they did to Bernie Sanders, to the gay community of Toronto. I've not seen us do that, and I doubt we will. But you know what? Project all you want, Steve, because it doesn't make you right.
And if people don't seem to be all that interested in what you have to say, maybe that's not their problem. Maybe it's yours.
I would like to say this is self-awareness from Steve, people, but it's not. It's projection. He just thinks that that's what we are, when really he knows deep down within, that's him. That's his people.
The hardest part is picking only 5. Catch you next time.
And the hardest part was sitting through this bullshit. Anyway, people, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, of sorts. If you want to support the channel, please donate to the Patreon down below and like the video. Please do. Every little helps. If you want to help me do this full time and get off whatever it is that I do at the moment to finance this channel, and if you have a little bit of spare cash, please do so. Again, every little helps. And please, if you agree with me or disagree with me. Anyway, people, I will see you. Oh, what's this? YouTube notification. Well, I better check this out. This might be interesting. Steve!